Welcome back for another strategy video on Clans of Caledonia. My name is Ollie Helm. Clan MacDonald is one of my least played clans, but I once again found a good game against strong competitors to discuss. Let's see what we can learn from this game. Clans McEwen, Cunningham, and MacDonald are on offer for this game. Many clans get big benefits from certain ports, so I often look at those first to see if there are any advantages to be had. Both McEwen and Cunningham get a strong benefit with the basic port, but it's not there. MacDonald doesn't really gain an extra advantage from any port, so the port story is pretty meh. MacDonald does gain an advantage on certain board layouts though. What I am looking for is a large central lock, and this one has the smallest one possible. Large locks are really nice because at the beginning of the game, MacDonald can traverse them with a fisherman and not have to spend turns or money buying shipping. That generally means that MacDonald can reach key locations like ports and one hexes faster than opponents. With this port layout, although there is no large central lock, there are 4 medium-sized locks, which is better than some other board combinations. There are several decent contracts, but none that really stand out. As you may know, I value quite highly a starting contract that is cheap to complete and returns lots of money. That makes a starting worker location next to the contracts port more likely. That contracts port is a big wildcard for McEwen, because they could do really well in the game with a good starting contract, but if the port doesn't yield anything good, then the contracts on the board are pretty tough to work with. Next, if we take a look at the glory tiles, there isn't really anything that stands out. The edge tile glory in round 5 will make this starting 1 hex a bit more valuable, so whoever's first player maybe gets a 1.5 point benefit. To sum it all up, there's nothing that excites me in the game setup. I don't care much for any of the clans, and there's not much of an advantage to being first player. Usually, players like bidding for Cunningham, so I will bid into the teens, I suppose, just to make sure first player pays up. But I'm not interested in bidding much here. I'm okay taking MacDonald for 0 and getting a bit of a head start, which often happens because players really do not like to play MacDonald. As expected, Cunningham was bid up nicely, and I managed to bid up the second clan to 6. It's always risky to bid opponents up just to get them to pay more, because you might get left hanging. However, it can be the difference between winning and losing, as many of you have probably experienced when you lost by 1 point. Had I been dropped at 5, I likely would have still taken MacDonald. As mentioned earlier, there are 2 really good ports to start the game, so I expect workers to be placed around them. With the process port, this 1 hex is really good because of the cheap worker cost and because it is an edge tile. There is also plenty of space to expand cheaply to the south. This minor 1 hex is also really good as it gives access to the central lock, assuming you get the neighboring 1 hex. It is a bit more costly though, because either it takes an extra shipping compared to the typical 2 hex shipping one gets in a game, or it takes a unit placement on a not so appealing 3 hex. On the other side of the board, the standout hex is the minor 1 hex. It is only 2 hex shipping away from the port and has the potential to snag these 1 hexes. Since I expect everyone to play for this port, the expansion might not happen, but it does mean avoiding 1 or 2 more shipping to get to the port from these forest 1 hexes. And here is where MacDonald has a big advantage, by being able to place in the water. Both Cunningham and McEwen should get one of the preferred hexes for a port, but MacDonald will get 2. Interesting. The first 2 worker placements are not where I would have gone. Cunningham placed on the forest 1 hex, probably to get the cheap hexes in the area and have an easier time of getting to the central lock. But it will cost an extra 7 or 8 pounds to get to the port in extra hex and or shipping costs. McEwen's choice is even more perplexing. The placement is costing an extra 7 pounds compared to just taking the minor 1 hex because of the 3 pound difference in hex cost and extra shipping that is required to get to the port. As much as I like the forest 1 edge hex, this minor 1 hex is my top choice, as then I have a better shot at expanding into the central lock by playing onto this 1 hex. The minor 1 hex by the contracts port is a good one, but I would rather start with a fisherman in the water to save 1 pound, access the port quickly, and then I choose how to expand while opponents get shipping. McEwen took the forest 1 hex, and there's another interesting choice by Cunningham to claim the minor 1 hex on the central lock. They will need to spend a lot of money to get to the processed goods port and may not have enough to claim anything around the central lock. Well, we'll see how it goes for them. Round 1. When I play MacDonald, the first thing I think about with worker placement is which water bodies do I want my workers to be placed in as fishermen. Ideally, I place a fisherman in all the big water bodies, so these 4. I will try to claim the island hex and then make my way to the central lock and bottom of the board this way. If I can get to the bottom of the board first, then there's a 5th fisherman in this water body. That leaves 3 more workers to place, and one of them has already been placed here. For my remaining 2 workers, I could place them on this minor 1 hex and perhaps this minor 1 hex if I can get down there before the others. There is an option to block this minor 1 hex for my opponents, but it doesn't really help me in any way, whereas the other 2 do, so I will leave it. Similarly, I could try and get this forest 1 edge hex, but other than 1.5 glory points, it doesn't help me progress like the other 2 do. Cunningham chose a contract over blocking me, which is great news, as now I have a cheap hex to get to the central lock. First, though, let's get a contract and the extra £5 that comes from the port. Not bad. The 3 wool contract is the number 4 contract in the game, so I'm happy with that one. What's also nice about the contract is that it only requires sheep, and there are a lot of cheap 1 and 2 hexes to claim around the central lock along with the island hex. Cunningham really needs to get to the port, which leaves me to claim the key hexes around the central lock. As I don't need shipping, I can easily move across the water hexes to get to the processed goods port and cheap hexes. For my last move, I only have £7 left, so I have a choice. Either I go on the forest 1 edge hex and earn an extra £4 for the next round, or I get shipping in preparation for crossing the river to continue my expansion. The edge hex also earns 1.5 glory, which is super. Except if I use the worker there, then I will not be able to place a worker in one of my 3 remaining locations. 2 are in the water to avoid paying an extra £8 for 2 hex shipping, and the 3rd is on this minor 1 hex that gives me access to the animal port and saves £5 by avoiding the 6 hex. Early in the game, I tend to favor expansion options more in order to better control the board, so I took the shipping. I'm happy with my start as I am controlling the center of the board and am well on my way to getting to the other 2 ports and cheap southern hexes. Round 1 benefit for both Cunningham and McEwen was £0. For MacDonald, I ordinarily place a £12 benefit to start, as that represents the equivalent of 2 lock shipping. But this time I will make the case that I have a 3 lock shipping benefit worth £16, as I was able to get to the processed goods port, which was 3 hexes away. I placed 3 workers in the water, so saved £3 due to no hex cost, and I count a £2 benefit for each so-called minor that I put down. If I count 1 fisherman as a minor, then I put down 3 minors for a benefit of £6. I also will add a £10 benefit for accessing all the cheap hexes first. That is a somewhat arbitrary number, but it gets the point across that there is a real benefit to being able to get to cheap hexes before your opponents. Total round 1 benefit is £35. Round 2. My plan hasn't changed, which is to get to the 2 ports. If I can get to the trading port, then I can earn an extra £6 for selling my cheese. I'm not in a rush to complete my contract, but in this case, I needed to do it because first, I can't reach the trading port yet, so I need to play a turn and don't have enough money to play a unit down. And second, I won't have merchants to sell the wool for income, so I may as well use them in the contract. I was able to use a trading port, which allowed me to get a wheat down. I've noticed some players don't like putting a wheat down unless they can also get bread or whiskey down to go with it. But I find that because wheat is so expensive, it is not always possible to do this in the same round. That's okay, because I still get 2 grain that I can then sell for income. Clan benefit was £2 for placing 2 fishermen in the water. Round 3. The story is still the same, as I will continue on to the meat port and also complete my 2nd contract while using that port. Here comes Cunningham. I can still make it to the port though. Well, that's convenient. Cunningham placed a bakery right next to me so I can buy cheap bread, which is timely given that the glory for this round is processed goods. I placed my last worker for a clan benefit of £2, and I'm also happy with how the contracts are going. There are a lot of tobacco contracts on the board, so getting another cotton contract is nice, especially as it is relatively easy for me to complete it, given what I produce. Round 4. Time to start completing more contracts. I need another cheese to complete my existing contract, so probably won't get the awesome one sheep, one cheese contract that just showed up. My first move will be to play a unit down to get cheap cheese, likely here. Buying 3 cheap cheeses means I will then be able to complete any of these 3 contracts. I would also like to get some wheat down to help produce my bread and a whiskey to come so that I can sell my grain given its high value. The first and second part succeeded as I got cheap cheese and a wheat down. Taking the 4 tobacco contract means lots of export points, but also that I can convert my bread into points, given that it is not worth much in the market. The third and fourth parts of my plan got executed with the selling of the grain and a completed contract. Unfortunately, I didn't get a whiskey down as I chose to put a cow down to create an extra cheese. The whiskey is worth more than the cheese, so ordinarily I would rather produce it, but producing cheese also means I keep a grain that I can sell for money. So I'd rather have a cheese and a grain worth 17 pounds compared to just a whiskey worth 12 pounds. The round is already over for me. That is one thing I don't like about MacDonald. I don't have as much money to work with compared to other clans. Clan benefit this round was 0 pounds. Round 5. As usual, before we discuss this last round, let's do a rough calculation on where the scores are for each clan. MacDonald currently has 35 with another 44 points in export goods and another 22 points for basic and processed goods for a total of 101 points. Cunningham has 10 points, 44 points in export goods, and 9 points for basic and processed goods for a total of 63 points. McEwen's numbers are 28 plus 49 export points if we include the contract they're about to complete, 17 for processed and basic goods to total 94. I'm feeling good here because although I have less money than my opponents, I have more processed goods. Another way to look at potential round 5 point production is by converting everything to cash. From that perspective, all my basic and processed goods are worth 100 pounds, plus the 50 pounds I actually have, for a total of 150 pounds. Cunningham's numbers work out to 142 pounds, and McEwen's comes out to 146 pounds. So we're all around the same amount of point production capability, but I'm a bit ahead in points. On to the contracts in round 5. One of the reasons I stayed away from taking tobacco contracts earlier was because there was so much of it in the game, and with the new contracts, there's still a lot. If all contracts on the board are completed, and we include the one that McEwen will complete, there are 14 cotton, 28 tobacco, and 11 sugarcane export goods. With sugarcane in short supply, that makes these 2 contracts really good ones. This one gets more points, but I always value the return cash highly, so the 2 cow contract it is. I can probably complete 2 more contracts, and someone is going to take the really good cotton contract, so it might as well be me. Then I can take a tobacco contract to make sure that tobacco export goods stay higher than cotton. I would rather have another sugarcane contract, but I just need to make sure that the total tobacco export goods stays higher than cotton to maximize points. I will get a free expansion where I can put a 4th bread down for the building bonus, so first I need to raise some cash by selling my grain. Contract completed. Let's see what we get for the building bonus contracts. Oh, that's really nice. The 2 bread contract is doable and it returns money, which means I should be able to get 1 more contract from the board. Either of these 2. That's great news because cotton is pushing up over tobacco, so we need to get the tobacco numbers up. Given the buying of 3 bread, McEwen is setting up to take the 4 bread contracts. I think I'll be okay on the export numbers. I need money, so I'm selling cheese, but keeping 1 as I set up for the 3 tobacco contract after I complete my current contract. There goes the 4 bread contract. And there goes the 3 tobacco contract. That's the game. Clan benefit for the round was 0 pounds, so the total clan benefit for the game was 39 pounds. MacDonald is a bit harder to play, as there is a perceived lack of money, and using the fisherman optimally is challenging. Looking at my average scores across all clans, MacDonald is my 2nd worst, but today, it was a strong performance. That's it. I hope you found my commentary helpful. Feel free to leave comments below and happy playing!